Joining us on the program, everyone. I am Precious Amayo. Let's begin with the latest negotiations between between U.S. and Iran. U.S. Vice President JD Vance told Iran to take Washington's threats of military action seriously. And that's a day after President Donald Trump appeared to build the case for war in his State of the Union address. As U.S. forces massed in the Middle East, President Trump claimed in his speech to Congress on Tuesday that Iran is seeking to develop missiles that can strike the United States. President Trump also accused the Islamic Republic, whose negotiators will meet U.S. officials in Geneva today, of having sinister nuclear ambitions and working to rebuild a nuclear program that was targeted by U.S. strikes last year. The vice president said that while Trump was going to try to get Iran to make a deal diplomatically, the U.S. president also had the right to use military action. While Trump said he preferred a diplomatic solution, he also set out what appeared to be the justifications for possible military action in the first State of the Union address of his second term. Under the previous 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, which Trump topped during his first term in office in 2018, the restrictions on Iran's program were due to expire over a number of years. Iran insists its nuclear program is for civilian purposes. Now, for more on this development, international law expert Livingstone Wechi joins me virtually. Good to have you join us, Livingstone. So, Livingstone, if you can hear me, we know that indirect negotiations mediated by Oman have begun in Switzerland. Do you see a favorable outlook for this third round of negotiations?
Well, you know that the statement from President Vance, Vice President Vance, expresses the belligerent tone of the President Trump, particularly during the State of the Union address, where he made it very clear that diplomatic options are preferable, but that the alternative of military actions are also on the table and they are ready to explore same. And that type of statement, you have a belligerent tone from one side of the United States, whereas the bellicose disposition of Iran, stating that their nuclear program is for peaceful civilian purposes. One begins to wonder, what is a peaceful civilian purpose with a nuclear capability on discourse? So the point is that we are hoping that the commitment from the U.S. to diplomatic resolution of the issue, as well as Iran to same, really works out, because Iran is said to have the highest stockpile of ballistic missile in the Middle East, and America is highly concerned that that type of capability has the potentiality of threatening, or it currently serves as a threat to America's interest around that region. That is the system with the highest capability of striking directly to the U.S., the whole of Europe, including Israel. So America is not taking this with a pinch of the salt. It serves right now as the foremost threat to the United States military and political interest, both within the American axis, the Middle East, up to Western Europe. So it's a big talk. And I think,
I want to stay there, Livingstone. Apologies for butting in, because you mentioned a stockpile. We know that President Trump, in his address, had claimed that Tehran was already developing missiles that can threaten Europe and U.S. bases overseas. And they're also working. He said they're also working to build what will soon reach the United States of America. But you remember, after the strike last year, President Trump said that Iran's enrichment capacity has been obliterated. So I want you to speak to that contradiction as to has the enrichment capacity been obliterated, or are they building nuclear weapons that can reach America?
You know, there is a semblance between what is playing out now, without prejudice, to the Bush's experience with Iraq, where it was, announced everywhere that Iraq developed chemical weapons and all manner of dangerous weapons, which were eventually found to be untrue. But in this particular case, yes, America and Israel strike last year was said to have obliterated that particular those facilities, and then there's an alleged buildup at the moment. Remember that part of those who helped Iran to build nuclear power in the 50s was America itself and Western Europe. After the coup of 1953-54, when America installed its protege in Iran, they entered into a nuclear deal, more or less negotiations for an amity, and that has now collapsed. But if America has sufficient intelligence, of course, remember America's view of the current Iranian government of sponsoring terrorism. That is a major question, and that gives America the feeling or the intelligence that there are possibilities of, after the June last year attack on Iran's sites, that they are rebuilding. Not only are they rebuilding, they are building further warheads within their nuclear facilities that will reach the United States in the entire geographical scope. And that is a threat to America's existence. And I hope you know that is very, it's at the heart of America's international interest, because America, as it stands today, has most of the neighbors of Iran as its closest allies. So if in the event where this is taken to at a height that is undesirable, it then may be that the option of regime change may be brought up. And if there is an option of regime change where the apple carts are being tilted, this current regime that is seen as a sponsor of terrorism around the world may resort to a total escalation and an explosion of all the weapons, because they are ready to die with the type of ideology they run with. They are ready to die rather than surrender cheap. So America also has
and interesting you mentioned that, Livingston, because I don't want to lose the point about the regime change, because JD Vance was asked in an interview about that. He sort of skipped that question and then asked Iran to take President Trump's military action statement seriously. I want to ask if you think that, because again, the Ayatollah has been sounding a note of warning to the US. He has taken a very defiant tone, very different from that of the President Pezeshkian. And I wanted to just ask you if you think that, is it a pressure tactic coming from the US, or are we on the brink of war?
Well, before the issue of nuclear powers being the basis for negotiation for a truce, there was the issue of human rights abuses of Iranian citizens. And the option of regime change played up strongly and prominently. As it were, as at today, I believe that America has not taken away the option of a regime change in Iran, because the tones of the negotiators, both the ones from Vance, the one from Marco Rubio, from Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, you will point them one by one, tilting towards the issue of regime change as a last resort. Because, of course, the idea of nuclear weapons have been left within the exclusive jurisdiction of the US, China, Russia, and a few others. Those who are seen as reckless governments would not be allowed to hold such powers, because the agreement of the past, which has broken down, only allowed Iran to maintain a 3.6% level of nuclear capabilities, which is not sufficient to develop bombs, which may give you other technological capabilities, but to build bombs, so about 97% of that was reduced. So they don't have the right to exercise nuclear capabilities below about 3.6%. So the regime change option will be America's strong resort if Iran refuses to bow, because America will not negotiate any option that will keep the powers and capabilities of Iran standing as a threat to its interest in the Middle East, to its neighbors who are American allies, and to the American geographical entity, as well as Western Europe. So remember, and I've made it clear earlier on, Iran is America's, Iran as it were today, is boundaried by mostly American allies. And those allies that are boundaried around Iran will not for any reason sacrifice their relationship with the US and get themselves destroyed. Because, of course, if America attacks Iran and any neighbor that is an ally turns the other way to support Iran, it ends up becoming a victim. Look at what has played out within the past few days between India and Israel. We made it clear here that when these superpowers indicate interest in certain territories, their their counterpart superpower states do not confront them. They maintain charge over certain territories. Indian president or prime minister visited Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv and said, India stands with Israel for life. That is what you see play out in the international plane. So who is ready to stick their neck currently for Iran? Because the more Iran keeps maintaining this bellicose disposition, violent and hostile disposition of trying to flex muscles with the US, the more they endanger themselves. So it's not enough to say we don't have biological weapons and that if America attacks us, we'll attack back. But if you study the disposition of Iran as at now, you will know that there is something they are hiding. And American intelligence is placing a cold watch on that which Iran appears to be hiding.
And for Iran, it is not just the lack of the weak international alliance that it has. It's also that its approval rating at home is really weak as well, considering the latest protest in the country. So it looks like it doesn't really have much leverage to bring to the table, but we're following that conversation in Switzerland. Thank you so much for your time. As always, international law expert, Livingstone Witchy.
Thank you.